peoples of the worldwide federated internet. What's good? Let's get to some cultural issues. So I was listening to some instrumentals from one of my favorite hip hop groups of all time. It's a tribe called Quest, a group from the late 80s, early 90s, from the native tongue movement. You had leaders of the new school, Tribe Called Quest, Busta Rhymes, De La Soul, just that whole collective. It was just a unique sound they had. And anybody who grew up on hip hop during that era, you know that sound. But I was listening to some instrumentals from a Tribe Called Quest. One instrumental in particular from a song called Electric Relaxation. They used a dope Q-Tip, who's MC slash producer, beat producer in the group. Used a incredible jazz sample. Incredible. There's several, I'm about to get hip hop geek on you. There's several people within the hip hop community as far as beat making, classic beat makers, that I have a lot of respect for their ear and the sounds they construct. Pete Rock, Large Professor, Q-Tip, DJ Premier. There's others, but those are amongst the dudes that are on the top of my list as far as producers are concerned. But as I listened to this instrumental, it brought back a flood of memories. So my childhood is unique, right? Not unique in that I experienced things nobody else experienced. There's a lot of people who grew up and had the experience that I had. But it's unique in that how I look at it. Like, I got a lot of good memories, and it's going to sound odd when I run down some stuff for you. So I was born in Brownsville, Brookdale Hospital. We lived on, if I'm not mistaken, when I was born, we lived on Mother Gaston. But I don't have memories from Mother Gaston because I was so small. All of the memories that are vivid to me was from Newport. So we lived on Newport for many years. I want to say I was around probably 7 or 8 when we left Newport. I remember we left around the time during DuckTales and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I've always been into the geekery. So we moved in with my aunt Teresa, who was living in Bed-Stuy at the time. I guess they're calling it Stuyvesant Heights now. It was the Stuy when I was growing up, or Bed-Stuy, Bedford-Stuyvesant. So she lived on Quincy between Nostrand and Marcy, around the corner down the block from Marcy Projects. Because I know a lot of people, when they hear Marcy, they think Marcy Projects because of Jay-Z. So anyway, we lived with her for a year and a half, 2 years, and then my mom got an apartment on Nostrand Ave. We lived on Nostrand for, I think I was in 3rd grade. We lived on Nostrand for maybe 2 years, 3 years. And from Nostrand, my memory fails me. I can't remember if we moved to Crown Heights first. I think we did. I think from Nostrand, we moved to Crown Heights. We was living with my Uncle Bob. I'm trying to remember, trying to go into my mental Rolodex. I think we lived on Lincoln. I think it was Lincoln between Underhill and Washington Ave, if I'm not mistaken. Right across the street from Prospect Park. Those who know the area, they'll know. From there, we moved to Kosciuszko, and we lived on Kosciuszko between Stuyvesant and Malcolm X. From there, we moved into a shelter in Manhattan. It was hard times. We lived in a family shelter in Manhattan for about I think the entirety of my seventh grade year. We lived in that shelter, and then we moved into a placement shelter in Brownsville, Amboy between Blake and Sutter. For those who are familiar with the area, you know exactly what buildings I'm talking about. As a matter of fact, Mike Tyson had a pigeon coop across the street from the building we lived in. He came through once or twice. Then from there, we moved to arguably the best place we ever lived. Not arguably, it was the best place we ever lived in East New York. We lived on Autumn between Pickett and Belmont. We lived in it was a house that was converted into an apartment building, a 3-family house. We had the top floor was our apartment. There was an apartment on the ground level floor, and then there was an apartment in the basement. We had a balcony. It was, as far as areas are concerned, it was the nicest area that I remember living in Brooklyn during the time. A lot of things have changed, in transition, but I remember we had a balcony. My mom used to cook out on a balcony. All my friends would come down. My mom was killing it on the grill. My mom kills it in the kitchen, period. But from there, my mom left Brooklyn. I stayed behind for several months because I didn't want to leave. Believe it or not, I didn't want to leave Brooklyn at all. It's kind of crazy when I think about that now. And then I eventually left, but I went off to basic training shortly after leaving Brooklyn. Like not even 6 months, I want to say, not even that long. So went off to basic training. Got to Florida, lived in Florida for 22 years. I just left Florida 5 months ago to, explore Texas, see what Texas talk about. But I've seen some great things. I had a traveling job for a number of years, traveled all over the globe. I've seen many places. God has allowed me to do many things. I took a road trip across Europe some years ago. That was amazing. Amazing. Why do I say all this? We live in a country that allows a story like that to be possible. And that's why I said these memories of my childhood are not bad memories. We had some hard times, but there was a progression. Things got better as time went on. And I'm not saying you can't have that story in other countries. I live in the United States, so I know about the internal workings of the United States. I can't speak for other countries. But one thing I do know is there's not many countries where you could see that progression. And when people bring up progression and people bring up life and making it in the United States, we always hear the usual suspect names. But it's those names are necessary to bring up because you see the contrast. See, in the United States, you see the contrast of people's lives and the progression of their lives. You take a Sean Combs, fired from record labels, started his own label, had one of the most recognized acts on the planet besides Snoop Dogg on that label, which is Biggie Smalls. It's almost nowhere. I don't know of anywhere you could go where people don't know of Biggie Smalls, don't know his music, right? You got Jay-Z that was selling drugs in the 80s, in the mid to late 80s. Think about this. This man went from selling drugs, starting a record label with Dame Dash, to being a billionaire right now. You got stories like Herman Cain, Look up his story and how he started, what his parents went through, what they endured, sending him to college and him making it to where he made it to. Ben Carson, another great story. You look at his early life and what he made it out of and the success that he attained. Condoleezza Rice, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, T.I. And it's not just entertainers. Now, I bring those names up, even though, Herman Cain is not an entertainer, obviously, neither is Ben Carson or Condoleezza Rice, but I bring those names up. But it's not just people that made it into the eyes of the public as far as status. I think my story is a success story. Started out broke. I'm telling you, like when I hear people today talk about what they don't have, I'm like, you don't understand what it's like not to have. I remember, I will never forget this when we lived on Kosciuszko. We had no food in the fridge. My mom had rice and pinto beans. That's all we had. And she had some flour. Man, my mom made one of the most banging meals I ever ate in my life. Just with that rice, that flour, and that pinto beans. It was amazing. I know what it's like to be broke. I know what it's like to be poor. And by no means am I rich. I have my financial struggles at times. But yo, I'm straight. When I tell you I'm straight, I am straight. God has been good. But we always tend to focus in the United States. There's those groups that always focus on the have-nots. I'm not saying we don't need to give attention to the have-nots. I'm not saying that we don't need to give attention to the people that might need a little help up. Right? There's several reasons why people are poor, and you're never going to get rid of poverty, right? Some people just have unfortunate things happen. That's why I'm not against helping people. Now I am against blanket handouts, just the government coming in and we're just going to hand out money to everybody. I'm against that, right? But I do think people need in certain situations help. I have a lot of ideas of how the government can actually help instead of just giving out money. Like instead of like people always talk about free education, right? Which I'm not necessarily a fan of that idea, just giving everybody college. And the reason is making college free for everyone falls under the assumption that college equals success. And that is not true. College doesn't equal success. But what about people who are poor, who ran into some unfortunate situations? How about offering them some kind of training program? Maybe in computer science or electronics. It doesn't have to necessarily be engineering, but some marketable skill that would allow them to get a job so they can provide for themselves and not have the government provide for them. Anyway, just one of my ideas on a tangent. But when you look at these situations and you look at these people who've made it, and like I said, not everybody's in that higher percentile, but there's many people who've made it. I grew up and went to high school with many people who were poor, who are in way better positions now than they were then. So when I look at these people who look at the United States as this place where you're just impoverished and you're stuck in poverty, yo, that's just not true. That's not true, and it's not honest. And it in reality, it kind of ticks me off when I hear people sell that narrative. That's not to say that there aren't poor people. That's not to say that there aren't people who need a little help. But to say that the United States is a country where you're so oppressed that you can't make it, come on, miss me with that whole idea. That whole idea is super duper trash, and it's not intellectually honest at all. Jay-Z's a billionaire. drug dealer 30 some odd years ago and a billionaire. To, to get context for how monumental that is, when you get some time, look up how many billionaires there are on the planet and then look up how many billionaires, not millionaires, billionaires there are in the United States, like the percentage of billionaires versus population. So the fact that he could make it from where he was to billionaire is crazy. The fact that I can make it from where I started to where I am at now presently is crazy. Super blessed. Super thankful to God. And this is what these Marxists and these anarchists want to tear apart. I can't rock with that. I cannot rock with that at all. Is the United States a perfect country? Absolutely not. But this is a country where your starting place doesn't have to be your ending place. And that's not just something that white people have access to. Black people have access to that. Hispanic people have access to that. Anyone in the United States who wants it has access to that. So this narrative that opportunity is cut off from certain people, nonsense, straight nonsense. And this is what the anarchists and the Marxists want to tear apart and tear down. I can't vibe with that at all. Not even slightly. Y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.